Hello and welcome to the Love, Peace, Truth, Karma podcast. I'm your host, Leanne Brown. Thank you for joining us. I've got two incredible guests today, incredible ladies who have been at the forefront of speaking out about this whole situation. Danielle Wright from the UK Freedom Keepers, which is a worldwide organisation promoting medical freedom advocates, and also Louise Meadows, who has her own story to tell, tragic story about her own experience through this pandemic. So hope you enjoy it.
If you're in China, you just know it's corrupt. They want it to be like that here.
People are pretending to be 12-year-old kids, mate, and they're not.
Yeah.
They're 40-year-old men.
Now we're getting bombarded with all these death numbers, but there's no context there.
He'd got one child pregnant, he'd raped many others, and we had evidence to prove that.
Do you think evil still exists today as it did back then? And the answer should very simply be yes.
So ladies, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast, Love, Peace, Truth, Karma. Louise, I'm going to come to you first because your real heartbreaking story that you've been so brave to share about your dad, about your whole experience with this situation and the jab. And we're going to call it, we've just had a discussion about this, we're going to call it a code word today because I'm just really conscious of getting censored. So we're going to call it the Maxine. So we'll go with that today, and I think we'll just carry that throughout. I mean, I've said it throughout the other podcasts, but we'll see if it works. So obviously your dad had the Maxine.
Yeah, he had the Pfizer vaccine back in January. And within less than 24 hours after having his first vaccine, the Pfizer, we're pointing that out, it was the Pfizer, he had a heart attack. And at the time, we didn't know it was a heart attack because he was just complaining of indigestion, but it wasn't in his chest and he didn't have any aches and pains in his arms. It was all in his solar plexus, so he didn't put two and two together, you know, and he was such a fit and healthy man. He was 76. You know, the week before he decorated all of the lounge up on ladders to the ceiling, everything. So there was no reason to us at all to think that he was having a heart attack when he had this indigestion.
How old was Dad?
He was 76. So yeah, that was
But fit and healthy.
Oh, really fit and healthy. I mean, he skied, he cycled, he even he rode horses. You know, he did everything. He had a kayak, and he walked my dog for me every day while I was at the stables with my sister and her dogs, all around the park, up and down steps, all around the meadow. You know, the river. A good hour and a half walk every day.
Wow.
So he had the Pfizer on the Saturday, and on the Sunday he started complaining of this indigestion, which continued throughout the week. But when it got to Wednesday, it started getting worse. Now, I didn't know that my parents had had the jab. Yeah, because my sister and I, we didn't want them to have it.
And you made that quite clear to them.
We'd made that very, very clear. But my dad, well, he was ex-police, ex-army. You know, he was a sergeant in the police, in Greater Manchester Police. And he always did the right thing. And he'd been isolating for, 9 months, you know, since May, March, being very careful, concerned about my mum and her catching anything. So
is your mum fit and healthy?
Yeah, both of them really fit and healthy. But as soon as they mentioned that, you know, the vaccine had been brought out, I questioned it, and so did my sister, because we said, we're not sure about this, it doesn't feel right, you know, there's not enough data, you know, they've made this.
Of course, there's a bit of animosity between the family, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The elders and the youngers.
Yeah, and especially my sister. I mean, Lisa, she did more research than I did, and she begged and pleaded with my parents not to have it. Anyway, so by the Wednesday, I didn't find out. I just knew that my dad was not feeling very well. And then on the Wednesday, he phoned the doctor. So he was having sleepless nights, and by Wednesday, he was getting short of breath. So he had a telephone consultation with the doctor, who told him that it was likely to be a reaction to the vaccine. And
so they did say that?
Yep. but he should just rest and call back in a couple of days.
Wow.
So they never asked him to come in. They never took any heart, he monitored his heart or anything. They just said, call us back in a couple of days. So then it got progressively worse through the day, and my sister went round about 8 o'clock at night and took his pulse with her watch, and it was 122. So they decided to call the emergency doctor, who then told him to go made an appointment, so he went for consultation. And then he was, an ambulance was sent for, and he was taken to A&E with suspected pneumonia.
Oh, really?
So, he was taken, and my mum and sister were left, and he was taken straight off by an ambulance. So at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Were they not allowed to go in the ambulance?
No.
Is that still going on? That people are
That's
actually
still
being-
happening today, yeah.
So that was back in January. I think this was this will have been the 26th now, Wednesday the 26th or 27th of January. And then, so he got to hospital. Obviously, we didn't hear anything. We were just told that we'd be contacted as soon as they know anything. So at 1 o'clock in the morning, around 1 o'clock in the morning, we got a phone call to say that his blood results had come back. He'd had a COVID test and it was negative. And his blood results told them that he had had a heart attack on Sunday, a substantial heart attack, which hence the reason, the indigestion and the shortness of breath later on in the week. And then they said, well, we'll call you tomorrow. But then at, I think it was 3:30 in the morning, on the early hours of Thursday morning, we had another phone call to say he'd had a second substantial heart attack and we need to go to the hospital straight away because he'd now gone into heart failure.
Oh, dear.
So, and from obviously your experience, we've kind of gravitated together, you and I, through UK Freedom Keepers, and my son is vaccine injured, nothing related to the current vaccine.
Injured.
Yes, vaccine injured, should I say.
Yeah.
And what we found through offering support to other families is your story and your tragedy and your loss in your family, unfortunately, is a trend. People are saying inflammation and fluid around the heart, no family history of any heart problems, and this is happening. And the data is there on the government website to say that this is a heavily reported response to the vaccine. But the public are not being informed of this. So this, I think, is why we do what we do, is for informed consent. So, and to help other families to stop that heartache and other families losing that member.
Yeah, because most people don't even know about
people don't know the risks.
System. They don't know the risk. They don't know.
Or the reporting system through yellow cards.
Well, we had no idea. When we got to the hospital, we got told by the first doctor that my dad had 4 hours to live.
Wow.
But then that doctor went off shift and the cardiologist came to us and said, I'm not willing to give up on your dad yet because he is the fittest 76-year-old I've ever seen. But his heart was so badly damaged that they showed another cardiologist at a different hospital, and they said no, because they were thinking about operating, but they said no, his heart's too badly damaged, so we're not going to say, he just has to stay at the hospital and basically die.
Wow.
So we questioned the cardiologist and we said, is this related to the vaccine? And he said, I wouldn't rule it out. Now, this was back in January, remember, so there was not really
not
any
enough
reports.
data, really, not many reports.
Yeah, so the first doctor said absolutely not. It's
and
not
as
related.
they call it, a lag. They say there's always a lag
Yeah.
in the system. So the
Yeah.
data is not in real time, which is understandable. When recording and collating data, there can be a lag.
Yeah.
But at the same token, there's a duty of care to acknowledge that where there is risk.
Yeah.
And they obviously had other patients in at that time, because we now know from speaking to people nationwide, different time periods, that people were dying from this.
Well, after the cardiologist told us, that he thought it was a possibility or that he wouldn't rule it out, he said that my dad was the fittest 76-year-old he'd ever seen. He also didn't understand why my dad wasn't responding to the treatment, so they wanted to give him another COVID test. And we said, well, I was hysterical. And I said, absolutely not. You're not testing my dad again, because if you test him and
They'll
you
make
keep
sure.
on testing,
Yeah.
you're going to get a positive test.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you'll take him away and we'll never see him again. So we were hysterical.
Yeah.
And they didn't give him another test. And they actually told us at one point as well that we had to leave the hospital due to COVID. We weren't allowed to stay. And I actually said, we're not going.
And everybody's educated as you and your
Yeah,
sister
I'm not
are.
moving.
Are they?
Strong-willed.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
You have to be strong to
You
fight,
just
'cause
have to
You do.
tell them.
Does people do like almost see doctors as kind of like an authority figure that we're
Yeah.
supposed to bow
Yeah.
down to, or just listen to and assume they have our best interests at heart, and everything that they say is more knowledgeable than
A
than
good doctor will
ourselves.
ask you about the patient and ask, you know the patient better than I do. What's their presentation? How do they operate? What's their general day-to-day well-being and health? And a good doctor will ask you that, because that information collates and paints a bigger picture about the patient. And you do find that.
Yeah.
But only that you and your sister were educated, you stood your ground, but
Yeah.
not many families are. So
No.
they've had their loved one ripped from them based on a false
disgusting.
positive test.
Yeah.
And that is that. So
Yeah.
it's been in a very abrupt ending to a loved one's life.
100%.
So many.
So you've managed that
Yeah.
part in a very difficult situation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my dad obviously deteriorated when he went into hospital then, and the cardiologist went off shift, and then we had the original doctor that we saw. He came back onto shift. So when we arrived at the hospital, I think it was at 4:00 in the morning of Thursday, my dad didn't die for another 33 hours. So that's how fit and healthy he was. You know, this wasn't an old man with a weak heart. He fought till the very, very last minute. And I think that's a really, really important, to note that.
Yeah.
Because I don't want people to think because he was 76 that he was, he was poorly, he was weak, he was
Frail,
really,
He was
frail.
fit,
He
well,
was
healthy,
really,
yeah,
really
until
healthy
that
man.
point.
So when he did pass away, and obviously it was heart failure on the death certificate, nobody ever mentioned to us the LCAR scheme. And we went away, and obviously at first, the first couple of weeks, you're just totally devastated. You can't really comprehend what's happened. It was such a shock. And my sister and I, we just deep down knew it was the vaccine. We just knew, it was just such a shock and so out of the blue and such a coincidence that we said, we can't let this lie.
Was your mum in agreement with you at
Just
that
gonna
point? Because it was difficult for your mum.
I mean, that was really difficult. I think at that time, my mum was she wasn't thinking straight. So we didn't discuss it for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I can
And
imagine,
then Lisa then started doing some research and found that America has a reporting system called VAERS. She found that, and then she thought, well, there must be some kind of reporting system here in the UK. And then she found,
Absolutely disgusting.
And then
That's how you have to find it.
Yeah, and then she found the LCAR scheme. So we investigated it, and then we realised that we have a regulatory agency, the MHRA, and we reported our dad's death to the LCAR on the 9th of February. And they didn't acknowledge our report for 6.5 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, the vaccines all have a black triangle status, which
do?
means there's not enough data for them.
What status, sorry?
A black triangle
triangle.
status.
Black triangle.
So this status is given to medicines or vaccines that haven't got enough data, basically, to warrant that they are safe for use. So they, within the clinical trials or the period of time that they've actually been being used.
And this happens with many vaccines, like the vitamin K at first.
Vaccines.
The vaccine.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's second language to me. I really need to study it.
So,
But again, not many people know this or will research it like you and your sister have.
So it clearly states on the government website, on the section for black triangle status, if you just click Google black triangle status, you can go and read all about it, that any medicine or vaccine with this status has to be intensely monitored.
Which is clearly not being
So
done.
the MHRA should be intensely monitoring. So if there is one report
Should be responding to it.
of a possible death, because we can't prove it.
Yeah.
My dad didn't have a post-mortem, but it's a possible death, then they, in my mind, should be contacting us the day after
Yeah.
they get that report.
This is one of these things that I was just thinking about on the way here. The fact that everybody's been so, like, literally on top of every COVID death. Like,
Yep.
One death is a tragedy. One death is like, but as soon as that injection has come out, every death is okay. Like it's just passing it off. Like it's just collateral damage.
And do you know, I had a conversation with a friend of mine actually, and it really, really upset me because she has different views to me about the current situation in COVID, you know, because her husband was quite poorly and so was a dad with COVID. And she turned around and said to me, when I was talking about my dad and, you know, the reasons that I attended the march back in April and in May in Manchester, she turned to me and said, well, you do know people die after vaccines, don't you? Because, I mean, I knew that. Did you not know that? That's what she said to me.
Do you know that people die after flu, or if they have the flu?
Yeah.
So
and I was like, so that's okay? So it's okay then?
Every life should matter regardless of the death.
So if people are dying of COVID, it's a tragedy. But do you not know that people die of vaccines?
Wow.
So that's okay.
Wow.
You know,
But this is the mind control. This is how
exactly
people
the
are
And this
mindset
hasn't
of
been
some
any
people.
different. So I've been on this journey
Yep.
for about 8 years now. And because of my son's situation, completely different with MMR. I didn't join the dots. It took me a long time to make the correlation. But once I'd joined the dots and done my research, and I look back at all of his red book at the time and all of his hospital appointments and reactions, everything married up on that spreadsheet. So from that point, and that's 8 years ago, it's never been any different. So you say about the MMR and the risks, and you've watched a child that could do X, Y, Z, can no longer do X, Y, Z. And it's been, but what about the children who are dying from measles, mumps and rubella? Well, what about the children who are dying from the MMR? There shouldn't be any difference. A life is a life, regardless of the death. You know, an injury or a disability, or, you know, and the big thing for me is, don't wait for it to happen to you. Research, make a fully informed choice. You know, do your research, reach out. There's lots of charities, organisations. It is a taboo subject. Of course it is. And it is a taboo subject because most of us within our families have had some type of vaccine across our family's health. And people almost feel a bit, oh, I didn't know then what I know now. But that doesn't matter. Neither did I. But what I know now is what I do moving forward. And for me, it shouldn't be, you know, 1 in 10,000 deaths through COVID, we shut the country down.
Yeah.
You know, 1 in 10,000 deaths through vaccine, we don't speak about it.
Yeah.
All the deaths and all the calculations are on every news channel, every magazine, every conversation point. And there's almost an arrogance about it now. Whereas if you speak about a death through the COVID vaccine, you're shut down and almost mocked. And the arrogance and the position from these people who've had the COVID vaccine, it's almost, well, I've had it and you've got a duty to have it. Well, I'm not going to take something with A, no long-term data, B, with a black triangle, C, some insurance companies are saying your policies are obsolete. That does need to be verified and checked with the individual insurance company. And for me, I mean, riddle me of this. Lots of my friends and family have had it. That's up to them. Majority haven't for our age group. The way I see it is, if you're young, you're fit, you're well, you're healthy. Most of us have children. You've got a duty of care to your child. Why would you go and choose to have something to risk your health that you could die? I'm not saying this lightly or disrespectfully. And I know you know that. You could become extremely poorly. So who's going to look after your children? But you won't allow your children to have it, but you'll quite happily have it.
Yes.
That mentality, I really don't understand.
It, but because I'm worried about that it might be dangerous, but I've already had it. Like,
I just don't understand the mentality.
I don't understand that either. I just want to go back to the MHRA with the supposedly intensely monitoring the data that they're given.
When did they
from
get
the
back to you?
Well, it's really important to note that 6.5 weeks after we received an email to say, thank you for your report. Can you just answer these 3 questions? One of which was what was written on the death certificate, which is heart failure. Were there any underlying health conditions? The answer was no. Did you have a post-mortem? The answer was no.
Are they allowing post-mortem? Well, they're trying to say that unless you fight for it,
You can fight for it. Yeah, I know people. I
Yeah.
can't name names because of.
Well, we
do know
didn't.
people who fought for it.
We didn't want a post-mortem. I mean, my
Right,
mum
okay.
absolutely
Personal
just said,
choice,
yeah,
isn't
she
it?
said absolutely no way. And to be honest, I didn't want one either, because
You knew.
I am not really. I don't care whether people believe me or about my dad dying after the Pfizer vaccine. It doesn't matter whether they
There's no
believe he
doubt.
died after that or not. What my message I'm trying to get across is that the MHRA are not investigating the death. So I can't prove about the Pfizer vaccine, but I can prove that the MHRA are not investigating deaths.
Yeah.
That's
Our
what I can
system
prove.
is failing the people.
It's failing
of the UK.
So
indeed.
there's a negligence there.
Yeah.
I mean, a
Huge.
huge, massive
Yeah,
negligence
indeed,
there.
yeah.
And
And
they
that's
have
to the people that actually do
No, it
report.
exists.
Yeah, and they've never,
Yeah.
never asked any further questions. Never. So they don't know anything about my dad's.
So that was the
it.
correspondence they've had
That's
with
it.
you, and that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's final in
So
their
they don't know
eyes.
what hospital he was at. They don't know which doctors dealt with him, who the cardiologist was. They have no further information about this death, this possible death after the Pfizer vaccine. So for me, that's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
So crazy that we know that there were hundreds more from the reports on the government website. Not just
Thousands.
Yeah. Well, I think Pfizer, I think there's nearly 500 deaths
Yeah,
after Pfizer. and
as
about-
they wrote,
reported.
Yeah.
that's been reported,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Exactly, that's been reported.
nearly 900 from the AstraZeneca, if I'm right in thinking this. And then hundreds of thousands of adverse reactions. So the fact that I know the MHRA haven't contacted me or don't know anything, any further
How many other
information.
people are in this position?
Yeah. How they're not intensely monitoring
And
this
it's
Black Triangle
independent,
status
yeah.
vaccine. They're just not.
Yeah.
And yet they're going forward and approving the vaccine for
Without all
our
the
children.
data, of course.
For me, it's crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
I cannot believe this when they know. So if you look at the other...
So Louise, just to stop you, so
sorry.
you know the voluntary. So
Yeah.
with regards to that reporting system, just in case this does reach people that need this information, it's a voluntarily reporting system. You have to voluntarily sit there. It is time consuming. You might not have all the information to hand. And if your GPs, your doctors, your consultants are not doing that on your behalf, and it can be quite time consuming to input that data. And because of that reason, when people are wrapped in grief or their home circumstances have changed, you may have the breadwinner who's now disabled or hospital bound. It's not a priority to people. So although we're kind of contradicting, they're not going to get back to you immediately, they are failing us. It's still very, very important to make that step and record that.
100%. 100% we
Yeah.
have to make people aware. And even if there are reactions, a week later
Yeah.
or 2 weeks later, it has to be reported.
To be, yeah.
Or 2 months later.
Or 2 months later,
Yeah,
it
indeed.
has to be reported, because there will be links in my mind.
Yeah, I
you
say.
know.
And this whole correlation is not causation. So just to recap on everything that Louise has said, healthy, fit, lived life to the full, was completely fine, no health problems, no family history until he took the vaccine. This
Yep.
is a senior, well-respected, retired police officer who did what he was expected to do, followed the rules. You've got to apply the rules that best fit you, because no human body is exactly the same. No genetic makeup is exactly the same. One shoe does not fit all. Unfortunately, the screening process, I am ex-cabin crew. I know colleagues from other airlines who have done a quick training course and they're out there giving the vaccine. I wouldn't feel confident and capable. So
I know actually someone who's doing that.
Yeah.
What about the pilots? All 4 pilots that have just died.
again,
young,
I was just going to
healthy
lead on
pilots.
to that. So we've got 4 British Airways
Yeah.
pilots, and I say this, and we have this conversation with the greatest respect for their families. They've died very suspicious circumstances. Now, we all know the airline industry, British Airways being our flagship airline for our country, they've had a vaccine programme rolled out. I haven't got the exact date, so I don't want to quote. We've also got a fit, healthy footballer who's appeared on TV in the Euros.
Yeah.
Can't make any conclusions or speculations because it's wrong to do that. This is an athlete. Again, his
They're trying to
teammate.
deny it now, aren't they?
So his
To say he's not
teammate
had it.
also was hospitalised with septic tonsillitis.
That's right, yeah.
So the teammate's got septic tonsillitis from post-Maxine. He's
Or potentially the testing, the swabs,
exactly.
probably.
On the
Yeah.
pitch, and then we've got 4
Tonsillitis,
airline pilots. So for me, there's a safety element of that. So British Airways have got a duty of care to both passengers and fellow crew members. If they've got pilots who have had the Maxine, and both pilots, ultimately, who's going to look after the aircraft? If that was to happen to both of them at once.
Yes,
So I've emailed
that's
into
right.
British Airways, and I hope other people will. And, you know, the aviation authority the governing body
Yeah.
needs to be really looking into this. I've also read some airlines now are saying if you have had the Maxine, then it's a risk if you're travelling because of the development of a blood clot.
Yeah.
So what I say to people is really research, make an informed consent, get the manufacturer's list of ingredients, understand who the vulnerable people are. You know, don't go and have it because you've got asthma or you've got this or got that. Understand this could then have huge consequences to that very thing you think you're having the Maxine for.
Since my dad passed away, we decided to go on this journey of spreading awareness.
Yeah.
I am now in contact with a lot of people who have lost loved ones.
Yeah, I was going to say the reaction. What's the reaction that you've had? And I'm sure a lot of people have reached out since you did that
they
first
gravitate
video.
them.
So
Yeah.
I'm in contact with a lot of people who've lost
Similar experiences
husband,
to
mum,
Yeah.
wife.
Yeah.
You know, and we're all in contact with one another. So
I mean,
know
I've
it's not-
heard on the Facebook page, there was an adverse reaction Facebook page and it got taken down. There
Yeah.
was 70,000 people on it.
72,000 followers, and
Well,
those
they-
followers were people who had poor experiences or
Yeah.
deaths,
Well,
and it was taken down.
Yeah, well, I was actually moderating on one of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and we had 140,000 members.
Wow.
140,000 members, and it got taken down one day. Honestly, we were
Censorship.
devastated and then I had private messages via Facebook of people to say, I'm devastated that this has happened because this was my lifeline. You know, this was my lifeline.
support network,
yeah,
isn't it?
There's a
Yeah.
support network, and it was taken down. I was warned from Facebook for posting the aims of the group, which were to inform people of the risks, to make sure that our children don't take part in the vaccination programme, and to say no to vaccine passports.
Yeah.
And Facebook warned me for those 3 points.
Wow.
Well, for the general public, they wouldn't necessarily know why that Facebook would be motivated to have such heavily censorship, because obviously Zuckerberg and obviously his family and obviously other pharmaceutical involvement with Facebook, and that goes right the way back. And this is why Robert Kennedy Jr. campaigned tirelessly with regards to censorship. He says, you know, we're in this modern society, and we, you know, one shoe doesn't fit all. People are having a voice. People are sharing government data at the moment and being
That's
shut
being
down, saying
It's
this
crazy.
data is not true, and it's being censored. So if the government data detailing the risks, there's a huge and people go, it's a one-sided argument, or it's heavily on one side. Well, in that respect, to me, it's one-sided. We should know the risks. Where there is risk, there must be choice. And if we go into everything with that little slogan in our mind and just making a fully informed choice,
Yeah.
you know.
Can I just make a point about the people who are giving the vaccines at these vaccination centres? I had the opportunity of, because my job is, I'm a makeup artist. I work in TV and advertising. And I had a lovely, lovely actress in my makeup chair a couple of weeks ago who told me that her part-time job was giving the vaccine. So I thought, okay, this is a good opportunity for me to now find out what she has been taught, you know, what training she's been
I
given.
find this horrifying.
And she told me, I mean, I didn't tell her who I was and that I'd lost my dad. I just chatted freely about it. Oh, you know, let me know, what was your training? She said, it was really, really intense, the training. I said, okay. And tell me more. I said, are there any risks to the vaccine? No, absolutely not. She said, you have more chance of dying from taking ibuprofen. That is what she's been taught. Wow. And I said, have you heard about the a la carte scheme? She said, yeah, I've heard something. I said, do you know that there are deaths reported after the vaccine? She said, no. I said, okay. And I left it at that. And I discussed, she said about the contraceptive pill that was riskier than the vaccines. And she also told me that it was like, so the vaccines were a dead virus. A dead virus.
So she's got absolutely no knowledge on what she's doing and delivering on a daily basis.
Yep.
And
So-
there's a deep sadness about that, really,
I
and a
was
deep
so
ignorance and a
So
lack
upset,
of medical
yeah.
ethics.
Well, I actually
They've
said
got these people on the front line.
Yeah, I actually said to her at the end of the day, I took her to one side and I said, I've not been 100% truthful. You know, obviously we spoke earlier about...
Can I just,
Yeah.
how many days was the training for?
Do you know, I think it was just one day.
Oh, wow.
I think. I mean, I can't. I don't 100%. I'm not 100%
Okay.
on that. She said it was intense. She had a lot to learn, but everything that she'd obviously been taught
Was
was
about-
so different to what
Yeah.
I have researched.
Yeah.
But I just got to one side at the end of the day, and I said, I've not been entirely truthful with you. You know, this is what I'm going to tell you a story about my dad, and she was shocked. She was really shocked, and I just said, could you please go and tell your boss at the vaccination centre and whoever trained you that you met me? And tell them that you've now met somebody who's actually lost a loved one after the vaccine. So she said, I will. And she was lovely. She said, I'm going to go and research what you've told me. So,
Because your research has got to be your own.
Yeah.
Your research has got to be your own.
Imagine distributing this and having no awareness of what potential dangers that you're inflicting on other human beings, and to think that there is a chance that you can kill somebody by doing this. And I know it's not like intentional, but does that still make it okay? Because I just couldn't sleep at night, or I wouldn't even want to do something unless I knew exactly
All
what
of the
was in a
facts.
syringe. It's a drug in a syringe that you're injecting into another human being. It's your duty of care to know what it is and what can go wrong. And when you talk about, like, saying, being brainwashed into saying, yes, it's 100% safe, going back to the children, which is absolutely horrifying. And we've all got children, and we all know that what's coming, don't we?
Yep.
And the BBC Panorama, the documentaries that have been showing in schools, and I think it had been taken down because there was a doctor on there. Did you see it? And one of the questions you might ask about the vaccine, is it safe? And she replies, yes, it's 100% safe. And this is going round in schools and showing children.
Blue Peter, wasn't it?
Yeah,
It's a
something like that.
No, not Blue Peter. So
It's
Newsround.
Newsround,
The
yeah.
report.
And it's just everything that was being said. We know it's blatant lies. It's not even
not
like
safe.
a misconstrued truth.
If it was safe,
it is
the
just
government,
lies.
yeah.
And these kids are obviously, and what it was more about is fearing the children about COVID, not about, and thinking that this is the saviour. But there is no reason to have it anyways, because it's not a cure, is it?
And it's not impacting children. I think the risk versus, obviously, so you've got doctors who've dedicated their lives to medicine who have then come out of retirement. You've got nurses who are practicing nurses who've dedicated their life to medicine, and they're genuine believing that they think they're doing the right thing. And I respect that, because they're not given that data of the deaths.
But do you not think by their profession it is their duty of care to understand what they're... I mean, I'm saying about just people that are learning out, that are administering it just for a day training, but actual doctors and nurses, I'm sorry, but I can't let them just be off the hook just for the fact
No, not at all.
because they're not doing it intentionally and they've not had that data. It is their duty of care to get that data.
So to lead
if
on
we
to
can
follow
do
on.
it,
Yeah, if we can do it, the general public,
and I think
with
that
no
now,
knowledge at all.
I think
Indeed,
now that most people are aware that there have been deaths.
Yeah.
It's all over
Yeah.
social media. Maybe not the news, but the majority of people are on Facebook and the majority of people are on Instagram.
But are people actually bothered? Because like we were saying before, it's like, it's just collateral damage. It's expected.
Well, it's funny
It's expected
because...
until it happens to you.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Until it's your mum, son,
exactly.
daughter, or
I mean,
father or relative. Yeah.
The brainwashing
Yes.
of the UK population is unbelievable.
Yeah,
and
another
I just
level.
want to give you an example of this. So I will put a picture, or in the past I put a picture of
a dog or a
myself
horse.
or my dog or my horse.
1,000 likes.
Loads of likes. Everyone likes,
Yeah.
likes. And when my dad died, we got lots of support initially of family and friends for the first 2 weeks. But then when we started speaking out that actually,
There's a
it was
correlation
caused
here.
by the Pfizer, I can honestly say I have lost family and friends. I have lost family and friends over this.
And this is a taboo subject.
And it is devastating.
Yeah.
And I am trying to spread awareness because ultimately they're coming for the kids. And I will fight to the death.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let
course.
this happen. And they're coming for the kids with the same vaccine that killed my dad.
Yeah.
And killed lots of other people who I'm in contact with and now friends with.
Yeah.
And all of us, we're fighting for this, aren't we? But, I will post and I will post and I will post on my Facebook. And all these posts are open for everyone to see. And obviously, I made my video to try and spread awareness as well.
All of us, Louise. So 1 million on the streets in London, but the BBC reported 300 people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, all of us.
Yeah. But the people that, my friends and family, a lot of them, they just scroll past,
Yeah.
They don't like, they don't comment, they ignore. And I think, how can you ignore this?
Yeah.
This is what's happened
It could
to
be
my
you
dad.
next.
And the majority of my friends and family have all gone and got the jab. And I'm like, but this is crazy to me. And they will not acknowledge that my dad has died after the jab.
Wow.
But they were happy to, be supportive when it was heart failure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as soon as you say, it was caused by the Pfizer jab, they don't want to know.
No.
So we've got a story, and you'll be able to. So we went to the march in London to support anti-lockdown, mandatory vaccines, face masks. We went, and do you remember we had a bite to eat at the end of the day, and we were sat next to these two Muslim ladies, gorgeous ladies. Me being me, I got chatting to the ladies, and they were saying, "What are you here for today?" And we said, "We've been on the march to support, obviously the mandatory vaccine and obviously the risks, and we've marched with people who've lost loved ones and about the lockdown." We just got chatting, and two sisters sat opposite each other, and one of them said, "I'm definitely not having it. I've told her she's been and had one," and she went, "Oh, I had it because I thought you had to have it. This is the thing. I thought you had to have it because you can't have your holiday unless you have the vaccine." But you can't have it anyway, even if you have or haven't.
No.
You can't have your this, you can't have your that. Those who've had the vaccine are in a worse case scenario than those who haven't now.
Yeah. Because
we're fit, well, healthy, uncompromised. So we got chatting and our conversation developed, and then she said, I don't know if you remember this, she said, "Well, I've had the first, but I don't know what to do about having my second one because my friend's had a stroke and my friend has died."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh my goodness. And she got quite upset telling me this. And can I just stop you there? You've just said to me your friend's had a stroke and died, but you don't know whether to have the second one. Think about what you've just said for a second. And she stopped and she went, I can't believe it. It was just like a light bulb moment for her, because the predictive programming and everything on every news station, dance radio station, children's cartoons, programs, everywhere we look,
It's there.
It's there.
Yeah.
And it's there. And it takes about 8 to 9 days to unlearn what they're constantly plugging into people.
Yeah.
So I say again, make a fully informed choice. Think about your children.
Yeah.
Think about your family members. One shoe does not fit all.
Yeah.
And that's what we campaign for on UK Freedom Keepers. We are a community. We're all equal. We support vaccine injured families. We signpost to charities who help vaccine injured families, or professionals, holistic therapists, detox, and just some counsellors who can counsel people who have had obviously bereavements. And just if you just look on some of the posts on UK Freedom Keepers, there's that many, isn't there? You're in that
it's
community.
great for the information as well. With the you post a lot about ingredients and stuff, and about all different jabs that are given to children. And
then you've got Jacqueline Dunn. She's a published author. She's a practitioner. She's constantly educating herself. And again, she's where there is risk, there must be choice. She's done lots of public speaking.
has she got an injured child as well?
She's got a vaccine injured child, which she publicly speaks out about, so I can't say that. And she openly speaks about. So she talks as a parent and as a professional. So I obviously, can respond to her as a parent about the journey. And then you've got Ellie Gray, who has been absolutely wonderful in this course. Love or hate Ellie, I think her work has been incredible. She's been consistent.
I don't understand how anyone could dislike that woman.
Because it's frightening for
neither.
people who don't know. It is frightening for people who didn't know, and they've gone down that road and they've done everything that they shouldn't. They're questioning themselves. I almost feel a bit foolish, and I can relate to that because I didn't question. I sat my baby on my knee and took him because the health visitor pressurised me. My own mum told me, do not have that because your nanny has epilepsy. Me being the eldest of a big family, I was the first one to go through the motions. I sat my child on, and from that day, this little chap of ours regressed. He ate everything, then he didn't. He walked flat-footed, then he didn't. He had eye contact, then he didn't. He could cut with scissors, then he didn't. And lots and lots and lots and lots went on. And now this is a common trend. So for me, make a fully informed choice, question the narrative. We have a parental new parents question list on UK Freedom Keepers. Those questions apply to what's happened with the COVID vaccine now. Sit and ask them questions. If your health practitioner or the person who's due to give you that vaccine can't answer those questions, then you shouldn't have that. Where there's doubt, there's doubt. Ask questions, come back, rethink about it. Don't be embarrassed. You only have one go at this.
Yeah.
It's your decision.
And going back to what
and no
you were
yellow
saying,
card was told to me either.
No.
So that was why I started campaigning. That was my motivation. I didn't know that was available until 2 years afterwards.
Yeah. Going back to what we were saying earlier before we started about how what Jacqueline's saying about this has never been done. It's not a normal, it's not the same vaccine as what's being given to your children, even though there is lots of questions that should be raised with regards to yourself and Jacqueline and many other parents that have had vaccine injured children. But this is, like we say, it's an experimental injection. It's never been done on humans. It's mRNA. And we know that the last mRNA vaccine, you have to really think about it, don't you? The animal trials, they all died. And they skipped it this time. So, and that's why it's not approved till 2023, because we are the experiment, and that's what people need to understand, that
this is not out of its trial period. This is still in its trial period. So the message from campaigners who, we might not be doctors, we might not be virologists, we might not be scientists, but what we are is we're researchers. We know we can recite the ingredients, the vaccine, the manufacturer's, insert. We have that information. We don't just go and look at an NHS leaflet. I've seen the NHS leaflet and it's embarrassing.
Haven't one of the vaccine inserts blank I seen? Well, one of them, they were taking them out, and I don't know if it was the Moderna one.
I've heard
that. I seen somebody doing it, and then somebody else had verified it, another nurse, and they literally
haven't seen that, so I can't quote.
Purposely blank or something like that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, so I can't quote on that. But the ones that I have,
there is
the information has not been easy to find this time. We can pretty much through the European medicines, we can, or wherever, all the regulated bodies, they've got those inserts, and through a lot of research, we can get that information. But for me, the big thing is we need to change. So we're activists in the fact that where there's risk, there must be choice. But then what's happening now is people are frightened, people are suppressed, massively suppressed. People's lives have been restricted, people have lost businesses, loved ones. Everybody just wants to get back to normal, which we all know what is going to be the new normal. So we've got to change our message. Our message hasn't got to be about the vaccines historically, it's about now. This one is different. Okay, so why is it different to the rest? It's different because it's still in its trial period. The risks are not being given to you and communicated at the forefront so you can make an informed consent. People are dying from this. There's lots and lots. I mean, we've seen the news touch base very briefly on the blood clot, and then you've got doctors and nurses saying, oh, it's only 30,000. So, okay, so if that was your mum or your dad, a life is a life. You know.
And just going back to the trials, actually, of the vaccines. You can find out yourself and read all about the clinical trials on the government website, but I know the Pfizer trials off the top of my head because obviously I've researched it. So in the trial of the Pfizer vaccine, that they have mass vaccinated the UK population with this, along with the other.
Not double placebo either, is it?
Well, they did 44. They trialled 44,000 people from America and someplace in Europe. 43,000, 21,500 were placebo. Okay. And out of the 21,500 people who took part with the Pfizer jab in the clinical trial, a small percentage of them were followed up 2 months after.
Only a small percentage were followed up?
Yeah, and 77% of those people were white. I think that's really important.
Oh,
to know.
yeah.
I think that's really important.
It is
to know.
because
Yeah.
the risks with obviously the
Yeah.
BAME community, they have a higher risk bracket, and that's being acknowledged now. They are a higher risk bracket, and they are reluctant to come forward because they know everybody. For me, everybody now knows somebody who's died or had an adverse reaction. And it did say on the news, I quote this, it said on the news the other night, and I couldn't believe I was hearing it because I don't watch the news. It just happened to be on in the lounge. 10%, they were saying 10% of the hospitalisation is from, and I quote, they called it the double jab, even that language. It's very, very loose, common language, the double jab. They've made it very normal to talk about this. This is people's private health. Why do we need to talk about it quite loosely? So they said 10% of those hospitalisations are from those who've had the double jab. So you have the double jab, you're higher risk of going in and being hospitalised if you have an adverse.
What is this for
reaction.
the
For the
third,
COVID
is it the
vaccine?
third wave or the fourth wave? Or
Yeah.
they seem
And
to
the
be able to
government
predict
data
with their
states,
crystal
doesn't it?
ball.
Yeah. Have you read that?
What?
The government data, it states, doesn't it, that we're expecting through the third wave, we're expecting
How do they
hospitalisations
know?
from these.
How do they know? This is what we've
Based
got to
on
ask
the
question.
modelling?
No,
Got
because
to
the
ask the
computer
question.
model that we've been going on from the
Yeah,
beginning, which has
exactly.
been
Yeah,
completely
exactly.
way off, and
Yeah.
we know that. It's about predictive programming.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
And this is really important. I'm desperate to get this figure out. I tried to do it on my Facebook, but they wouldn't let me post it. Facebook wouldn't let me post this 2 days ago.
Drum roll.
Yeah. So my children, I've got 2 children at secondary school, and they go to the biggest secondary school in my area, which has 16,000 pupils and staff.
Right.
So since September 2020 to date, guess how many cases of COVID there has been?
In the school?
Now remember, we are in the middle of a deadly pandemic. Yeah?
Yeah.
31.
Wow.
Okay? 31. So our children are super spreaders.
So
Apparently.
wait, but that's because they're being tested regularly as well.
This is with them being tested.
Yeah.
Still
Very
only
symptomatic,
what-
yeah.
So
Which has now been proven to be a
So
lie anyway.
when the lateral
asymptomatic thing.
flow tests came into our school, obviously my children didn't take part in it.
No, mine
but
neither.
they had, hold on, let me remember the figure. In 9 days, 3,457 lateral flow tests in 9 days. All were negative.
Wow.
All were negative.
Yeah.
I'm quite good at remembering figures, I have
Yeah.
to say. I keep writing them down and researching them. So,
And most parents think they've got to do
yeah.
that to keep the children in education.
Yeah.
You can opt out. There's ethylene oxide, which is obviously a very dangerous chemical if it's got overuse. It's never been risk assessed. You don't have to have this. This is optional. You write to your school, you make that phone call, and you opt out.
Yeah.
yeah.
Only got more figures.
But yeah, so I just wanted to point out, that at the moment we're being told by the media and the government that this new variant is spreading through children and young adults.
But in your school, they were
But
all
in my
negative.
school, it's not.
Yeah.
It's in my school, it's
Yeah.
not, because there's only been 31 cases
Yeah.
since September 2020. So someone's lying.
Yeah.
And for me, can I just say my theory, which I think we'll all agree on? If they continue to test,
Yeah.
because I've had an email today
Which
from
they're starting
our
rolling
school.
out again, aren't
Yeah,
they?
my headmaster has just emailed today
It's not a theory,
to say,
it's the truth.
please keep testing
Yeah.
at home twice a week, because if not, if we can't prove to the government that we are testing, the
Is that
parents
what
are
it is?
testing at home.
I'm mind blown that the headmasters
Yeah.
are folling this. And do you
And
think they're getting a lot of
I
pressure?
think this is the reason, because he has said in his email today, please keep testing twice weekly at home, because if you don't and we can't prove that the parents are being responsible and testing the children, they will make us start doing the test in school again, and it's so disruptive to the school, the days
getting
and the
the pressures
teaching.
from
Again,
above.
they have to have the parents' consent to it. So
Yeah.
why? This is what infuriates me. Why are parents wanting to test their children regularly when they've got no symptoms?
Exactly.
I get
Exactly.
it if they've got symptoms.
But if the cases
in
increase...
fact, I don't get it.
No,
I'll take that back. I don't get it.
But if the cases increase in schools, then they can then say this new variant is spreading
Of
through
course
the
they
kids.
can.
And then they'll just
Yeah.
come and say, let's vaccinate the kids.
Yeah, because
and then,
they're at risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the
They're
parents...
looking for a justification, aren't
They
they,
are.
at the moment? And they will manufacture a justification by coercing headmasters, and then they'll
Yeah.
hope. But what's happening is the tests are all coming back negative.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
they did
the
in our
tests
school.
were back
They did in our
negative.
school.
They are, but are they not doing the actual PCR test, or is it just a lateral flow
It's
test?
lateral flow
Right.
tests. And then if there's a positive lateral flow, apparently it's then a PCR test.
Right.
But I thought you had to have symptoms to have a PCR. I mean, I'm confused by the whole thing.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't really read the emails. I just delete.
So go on. I was just going to say about
And different
can't remember
schools,
what I was gonna
different
say.
measures and protocols in schools. Every school
Yeah.
is responding because we speak to friends. They're
Yeah.
all doing different things.
Yeah, I was just gonna
it's
say
quite
about-
sporadic.
And with
Right.
the mask wearing as well in schools, as soon as the children went back to school, whenever it was, I can't remember, when did they go? February? They went back after that lockdown.
Yeah.
I wrote a letter to the school and said, absolutely no way my children wearing masks.
No, I would
And
never
it was
allow my
fine.
children.
They both have an exempt card.
Yeah.
But everybody else is wearing
mine.
masks.
I
And I
know.
say,
I know.
Just tell the
But
school.
you know, when they went
can't wear a
back, when
mask.
Boris actually said we're going to take the masks off them, and
But the
then,
European countries are removing masks because the evidence is it causes more neurological
Yes.
damage to children sitting in a classroom. And this, people, is by neurological doctors who've spent their whole life in medicine, very credible doctors. The qualifications from some of these people who are speaking
Yeah.
out. Your children are sat with a mask on all day,
Yeah.
every
Yeah,
day.
it's not good.
It's causing problems.
But I've seen children on the school run, on their own, walking down the street
With
in
a
the
mask on.
morning with the mask
mask
on.
on. It's conditioning.
Yeah, of course.
It's conditioning
it
now.
is.
And it's so
Yeah,
sad to
it's
see.
so sad.
I mean, when I see anyone out in the
Yeah.
street just wearing a mask, it just makes me sad. You know,
It makes me
especially
sad.
like the oldies,
Yeah.
but the
Yeah.
children.
The children,
And it's
yeah.
it's just becoming second nature now, isn't it? Then people, they're not even thinking about it.
So rewind the clock pre-COVID. If somebody told you to go and test for a number of things and you had no symptoms, you would have just laughed at them.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
somebody had a baby, I always use this example. So if you had a baby, Louise, and I was due to come and visit you, but I had a bit of a cough and cold, I'd ring you up and say, Louise, I'm not going to come. I've got a bit of a cough and cold. I'll come and see once that I've got rid of this. Common sense seems to have gone.
Yeah.
There's no common sense
We're literally
anymore.
plugged into the TV, listening to the government.
Yeah.
When has a government and politics run health?
Yeah.
And there's always going to be a crossover, obviously, but
When we allow it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's up to each individual parent to stand and don't be frightened to come forward and say, because what's happening now is people are being alienated. But then when one person speaks up, it empowers another person to say, oh my goodness, I would never have it, but I felt like I couldn't speak about it in my
Yeah.
social circles.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's about having an open mind. Please have an open mind and respect people's position.
Yeah.
People who are saying, well, you should have it and you've got, well, actually, why have you had it? You're risking me because you could shed all over me.
It's that narrative of you have to do it to protect others when we know
No,
that
I
isn't
protect
the case. It doesn't
myself.
even
It
protect,
protect myself,
doesn't
my
do
own
that.
Doesn't make sense,
no.
does it? If
No.
someone's vaccinated, apparently they're protected. So why do we
Yeah.
have to be
Why are you so
vaccinated?
And it
offended?
doesn't stop you getting it. It doesn't stop you passing
it's
it on. It
crazy.
just
Yeah.
But I was just going to say, I with Lola, she did have a cough, and I did message school and said, "Oh, she's got a cough. I'm not going to bring her in." And they said, "Well,
Because you've used common sense, as we would before COVID.
Yeah, because imagine all the
Yeah,
viruses, the coughs and
exactly.
colds and kids
Yeah,
get. It's
yeah.
normal.
It's normal.
And people have just lost the ability to think about the fact that kids get sick. That's how they build their immune system. So then they said, yeah, well, she's going to have a PCR test to come back into school. And I said, well, she's not doing that.
No.
Well, we're going to have to get advice from East Cheshire, and then they got advice from Public Health England. So I was then thinking, if I have someone knocking on my door telling me I've got to isolate, because the headmistress then messaged me and said,
Because of a cough.
yeah, we have to treat it as a worst case scenario. Therefore, all your family is going to have to self-isolate to the 21st of June, which is today. Is it today?
Yeah, Freedom Day.
Yeah, Freedom Day, yeah. Oh, fake Freedom Day. If you don't reconsider, then the whole class is going to have to self-isolate as well.
Wow.
So obviously I've got a group WhatsApp with the parents, which I don't really entertain.
That's clearly a case of your head teacher offsetting her own personal opinion and obviously knows who you are in your position and offsetting that to manage your individual case.
I don't actually
her
think
response
it is
to that case is
I feel like
inappropriate.
it's just she's just following what she thinks is the guidelines, and obviously probably is like she's in it. She's in it, and she's just done everything
Yeah,
what
of
she's
course.
supposed to do. She's probably had the vaccine, and I'm sure she has anyways. But the parent WhatsApp, I mean, I'm only on it because I forget like when it's non-uniform day.
I
and
think
stuff
they're
like
brilliant.
If
The parent WhatsApps are brilliant.
If I've ever put any input in, it's something to do with like the flu mist or the dangers
Yeah,
of what's
yeah.
been going on, and it
It
gets
goes quiet.
completely ignored. So, but
I know the
obviously
feeling.
Lola was off that day, so it doesn't not rocket science, put 2 and 2 together to think that it was Lola. So that the parents then started talking about it, saying, who is it? Because obviously they can't disclose who it is. I hope they're all right. They need to just get a test, or this could be unnecessary. It's a shame. Now the kids are going to miss sports day. What's wrong with people? Wow. And it obviously got a bit more and more like intense. Then one of the parents put, this springs to mind, and put a picture of a book saying, don't be a dick. And it took all my might all my willpower
Don't dignify that with a response.
Not to respond and just go in, you know. And I just thought, you know what? I just delete myself from the group.
That's the best response.
I then I've made a conscious decision now to take Lola out of the school, and she didn't want to.
Right.
She's having, she was having her friends' messages saying, "Are you okay?" and everything. And a couple of the mums I've reached out to me and just say, "Look, I've heard that Lola might not be coming back, and I'm really sorry." But I feel that's the right decision for me, for my child. You know, not for me, for my child. And Lola is happy to do that. And I think because of the restrictions that are in place in school now, and are actually getting worse, not better. And when you see the likes of things like Ascot and the football, and it's just so infuriating. And I know wholeheartedly she'll still see her friends. She'll still,
of course,
she is going to be better off at school than B. I feel like it's more of an indoctrination, not an education. And the things that even, I mean, when we look at the stuff that they're being taught and you know, with regards to like all this whole supposedly pandemic, that it's just complete brainwashing, and it's to set them up. So they'll be just, the parents will accept it because they're going to go home and say, oh, we watched this video today. And it's just having that knock-on effect of
100%. And I think as a parent, if you believe what we believe, it's really, really
it's not
important.
about belief. It's if you research to follow the facts.
Yeah, if you know the facts, if you know, not if you believe, if you know the facts, then you must instill those facts into your children. And my children 100% know that if anything to do with COVID gets mentioned in school, anything about the vaccine, they have to put their hand up and educate people about. And my daughter is amazing at doing this. She's 13.
Great, isn't she?
You know, she gets me little facts and figures. She's 13.
Amazing.
So she gets little facts and figures. She wrote something, a little piece of paper she found in the library. She heard something, she saw a newspaper report about, you know, the first man that actually got the vaccine, that gentleman. I think he was called,
died,
what was he called? Yeah, can't remember.
It was called Shakespeare.
Shakespeare, I remember that. And she brought it home. I've got some information for you, because they're under strict instructions. If anything is mentioned about anyone coming in school to do any vaccine, you lock yourself in the toilet and you phone me. You know,
I'm like that with Lily.
I think it's amazing that she's like that.
But you do, and she put her hand up in her French class last week, and questioned the French teacher, who said, you know, we're in the middle of this pandemic, and, you know, the cases are rising. So she put her hand up and she said, excuse me, can I ask you, what do you think about the vaccines? The teacher was assessing. She said, well, I just want to let you all know my granddad died after the Pfizer.
Oh, good on her. For 13 to stand it.
Well done.
My boys are a bit younger, you see.
Gosh.
So
but, you know, I think that's really important. You know, we've got to educate our children.
100%.
You know, if we know the facts, we need to make sure our children know the facts, so then they can make their friends understand. And even if their friends don't believe them, because, I mean, she had a big debate when she sat next to the girl next to her in the French class who totally denied. She said, don't be so ridiculous. You know, the vaccine can't have killed your granddad. And she said, well, it did. Is your mum and dad vaccinated?
How funny.
And she said, yeah. She went, well, I'm just saying. You know, so I think it's really important, because our children, the ones that know the facts, then they can do that. They can spread the word.
Hallie, my daughter,
You know?
my eldest daughter, has been amazing, especially at college, because they've had different, obviously she's been doing online classes quite a lot. And she's
tough for their age group, the college students.
And some of her friends have had the vaccine already in college, and they've been asked questions. Like a couple of teachers have said, oh, what do you think about it? Are you going to get it? And Hallie's obviously spoke up and said, no, like, it's funny because her friend says, now's your chance, you can get all your information out. And Hallie's been so amazing, and it's incredible how much information, like, it's not incredible because obviously she's 18, you know, and how much they actually absorb, and that they are becoming educated.
But it could save a life. The enormity of it is it could save a life.
That's so true.
And that's why we're here, because it could save a life.
And she started rolling off all the things about it not being approved, and the trial until 2023, and it wasn't an actual normal, all the stuff we've just been talking about. And the teacher was actually writing notes and saying, oh, where have you heard that from,
Really?
and about the PCR test
Wow.
not being accurate and the upcycling. Literally, he was like, "Where did you hear that? Where did you hear that?" And she was telling him all the stuff, and he was writing notes.
And isn't that
out.
great?
And he'd come back to her and said, "Thank you
Open-minded.
for the information."
And isn't that wonderful
Yeah.
that she's got that? Because
Yeah.
ignorance usually shuts the person down. They try and, no,
Yeah.
absolutely won't take that on, and they won't
Yeah.
have an open mind. So my boys are a bit younger. I've got a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old with the flu mist being in school, which I really strongly disagree with. I think these things should happen before the half term because the flu mist is a shedder. So on the insert it says, if you have the flu mist, you cannot be around anybody who's having chemotherapy, radio, because
wow.
it's a huge risk. So it says that. I've got the UK Freedom Keepers. I can share all of that data, which has come direct from the manufacturer. So I sent that to my children's school. My children obviously don't have that because the fit, the well, the healthy. Why am I going to, give them that if they don't need it? And I kept my boys off them because it's a shedder. So that sheds. So then my children being around that, and okay, it might only be minimal, but at the time I had a member of family who was going through chemotherapy. So that's another important point. But I say to my boys, if ever any teacher, doctor, nurse comes into your school, you tell them, phone my mummy immediately. And what I urge all parents to do is to email the school. A phone call, great. But email, so you've got a full paper trail to say, under no circumstances are my children vaccinated, tested, without my consent. And this is me not giving consent. And those people, I get asked this question all the time in UK Freedom Keepers. What do I do? The doctor is hounding me. They're sending me letters. They keep sending me the slip. They keep ringing me. I don't want it. I'm feeling like they're putting me under pressure and I haven't got the confidence to have that conversation. What do I say? So I just tell them to contact the team and ask them to take you off the register if that's your decision. It's got to be your decision. It's got to be your research. We can signpost to the research and give you what you don't get. And half of the GPs now are starting to say, they're coming round because the majority, but then that other half you do get where they do try and make you feel really stupid about your decision. It's your child. If your gut's telling you not to, you stand with that. You don't let anybody pressurise you.
It's important. It's asking questions, like you say, and that's one of the things that the advice that you give about, if anyone, even like
any
not
neurological
just
history in the
COVID
family, huge
but
one.
Just having babies and I mean I've not even got to talk about like the pregnancy side of how women are suffering through pregnancy and being made to wear masks and
exactly.
all that,
all of that.
Even the fact that they're pushing this jab onto pregnant women,
And there has never been
any
data.
Apart
Apart
from the fact we know what a detrimental effect it's having, like
and they're
devastating
freely
effects.
just vaccinating the
I
pregnant
read
women.
a Veya's report this week and it's all there, it's publicised, it's open, to say that a lady was breastfeeding, unfortunately lost her infant because obviously she transmitted that through the breast milk, and that's there for anybody to go and read. It's such a sad loss, that really is. But you touched on the placebos, so they campaign, the government campaign for all the vulnerable and those with problems to come and have, or health problems or immunocompromised, come and have the vaccine first. But it had never been, nobody of that status has ever been on the trial. You'll know that from reading the trial
and
data.
also I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was something like 72 or 71 was the eldest person that they tested in the trials. So you know how they were giving it to the old people in the homes who were in their 80s and 90s.
And they would die. The death rate for that age group,
no one of that age had ever been
within the trial.
Yeah, within the trial.
Exactly.
There's something called PIC, physicians informed consent, which I've seen the data of the saying 1 in 9 children have had adverse reactions that have been tested when they've been testing adolescent children, you know what I mean? And all this stuff, this information is out there, and it's about researching it. And obviously, are you started any more groups on Facebook just before we finish, so people can actually reach out if they do have anybody that's had any adverse reactions?
There are other groups on Facebook. I'm not actually involved with them anymore, but I do know a gentleman who's, but I can't remember off the top of my head. I think he's done it under a secret name. I think it was Dave's secret group.
Okay.
I'll be honest.
And isn't it sad that that's what you've got to do to support people?
And there's another one I know called, should I say, is it okay to say these names on here? Yeah, is that okay?
If you
The
feel
Facebook?
uncomfortable, don't say it.
No, I'm just thinking I don't want to jeopardise these groups at all.
Well, how about if they can reach out to you
And then you can put them in the right direction.
if
That'd be
anybody
better.
has.
That'd be better.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so I'm on Facebook as Louise Meadows.
Yeah.
And my Instagram is at Louise Meadows Makeup.
okay. So yeah, they can reach out to you if anybody's. I mean, I'm sure you are always having people reaching out to you ongoing with regards to.
Yeah. But I mean, if
telling
anyone
us
has lost a loved one,
Yeah.
and they do want to speak to
Yeah.
me, I'm very willing to speak
Support,
to them
isn't
and
it?
support them, because
Support.
there's lots of us,
Yeah.
I'm in contact. I've made some really lovely friends.
That's fabulous.
We've all
It's
come
bittersweet,
together.
isn't it?
That's the nice
Yeah.
thing that's been.
It's
like,
bittersweet.
We've been able to meet each
Yeah,
other.
when we
and-
were
Yeah.
in London there at that march, shoulder to shoulder, my mum died, my dad died, my
Yeah.
sister. And it's absolutely devastating, but we're here shoulder to shoulder
Yeah.
to say, let's try and save lives
Yeah.
here, know the risks.
Yeah.
And that helps,
Yeah.
know the facts before you act. It's a bit of a slogan,
and we all need to stick together.
Yeah.
We do.
Because ultimately they are coming for the children.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
And we've got to stick together and make
indeed.
a stand and never let it happen.
No.
Indeed. Yeah. And then
yourself
UK
with-
Freedom Keepers, we're part of a global organisation. I host the UK chapter for that. Kind of just defaulted into that role, but we've got chapters completely across the world. So that's UK Freedom Keepers. You can come
Yeah.
to ourselves. We'll get
you're
the
on
information.
on
on Instagram. So
yeah.
we're only on Instagram.
Yeah.
And we've got Telegram pages where you can go. We can support, informed consent. We can offer you the vaccine manufacturer information so that there might be a particular ingredient in a vaccine that that you have an allergy to,
Yeah.
that your doctor or it's quite surprising when you take this information to some of the doctors. They welcome it and say, oh, right, I didn't know that. Then
Yeah.
other doctors like, oh, right. So it's just making fully informed consent.
Yeah.
We support vaccine injured, vaccine deaths. We'll signpost. And again, to echo what you've just said, we have to stick together
Yeah.
because they are coming for the children. And I hope we don't go like other countries and turn into mandatory vaccination for
Yes, me too.
education.
I mean,
I think it will.
I think the majority
Definitely.
of the adult UK population who want to be vaccinated have been vaccinated now.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any way we can help to inform
Once
those
they-
people
yeah, of
because I think
course.
it's the damage has been done.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
We've got to respect their decision
and,
as well.
and that's great.
If they've
and I
made an
do-
informed consent,
yeah.
we respect that decision.
But I mean,
Yeah.
it's one thing, making consenting for yourself,
But then
to be
consenting for
vaccinated,
children.
but consenting for your child. I think it's really important now for parents to realise that when they have actually gone to have their vaccination, they haven't been given the correct information so they can make an informed consent. There will be a video coming out soon as well, just to show what happens at the vaccination centres before vaccination and the questions that are asked and the information that's given.
Yeah.
And that will prove that information hasn't been given to the
I've
general
seen
public.
one of those actually. A guy was doing it. and
Yeah, there's
and they
another
had
one.
No clue.
Yeah.
There's another one that's coming out. It'll be out very shortly, and it clearly states that the vaccine is like the measles vaccine. It's exactly the same as the measles.
And
That's
for me,
what was
also,
told.
the
That was
audience
said.
must broaden. So we're all in our respective social media platforms, whether it be Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Telegram. Our audience, and this isn't my saying, it was actually from a guy called Stu the Wonder, and what he said is what we're doing is great, but we're regurgitating to the same audience. We now need to broaden our audience to protect the health of our children. On the VAERS site now, we've got there's deaths from children being reported. Canada, the Canadians are going absolutely mad over this because there's deaths from children who've had the vaccine. So we need to broaden our audience. We need to step outside our comfort zone, and the message can't be oppositional anymore. It's got to be, this one is different.
Yep.
This is why it's different. You may not have realised that when you went for yours, but there's no reason for you not to know it now, because everywhere you look, they might call us anti-vax, they might call us whatever. Nobody is an anti-vax for no reason. So I'm going to take the shame out of that. Does that make me an anti-vax? Well, if it does, well, I'm proud of it. Because if I would have known then what I know now, my little boy would have been okay. And he's doing great, by the way, because I'm his mum. You know, and my husband's worked downright hard to support what we've done with him.
Yeah.
But not everybody's as fortunate
No.
as I am.
Yeah.
So
And can I just also make one last point? I think, if you do know the facts, it's really important to speak your truth.
Yeah.
exactly.
Because what I've found through at work, I've whilst I've been working, I've been trying to gauge, you know, who kind of knows, who doesn't, who's, you know, aware, who isn't.
Are you comfortable having the conversation with?
Yeah. And I've had a few people that have said to me, and actually it's broken my heart. They've said, Louise, I 100% support you and agree with you, but please don't tell anyone I feel like this, because, you know, I'm worried
peer
about
pressure, isn't
what
it?
people will think of me.
Disgusting.
I don't want people to know I'm not having the vaccine.
Yeah.
But I would say, you know, that, like I keep saying, they're coming after the kids. We have a duty of
We need to
care now.
stand
We
up.
need
We
to
do.
stand up. We need to stand together, and we 100% need to speak our truth.
Yeah.
And if we have points to raise, and it's our job to educate people, and not just pretend.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
and that's what I'm finding. A
definitely.
lot of people that I know are just saying, I don't want people to know. I'm worried about, well, yeah, I'm worried about the backlash. I'm worried about that my career is possibly
I'm worried about the
well
future
and
of my
truly
children.
Yeah,
over.
it's the
And I'm worried
future.
about the future of my
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
So, you know, for me, I'm past caring what anyone thinks
Yeah.
of me. You know, I really don't care
Yeah.
anymore. I am going to speak my truth and make people aware of what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As mums,
good.
as
As mums, as parents,
We've got a
you
job
know.
to do.
And
As
not just
adults.
as adults, and not just
As
for
friends,
our own, not
yeah.
just for our own children, for
Other people's
everyone's
children, for the future
everyone's
generation.
We're
children.
here for the
Yeah.
less
You know.
informed. That's the way I
Yeah.
look at it.
Exactly.
And if we can just could have a little read of this information, you know, you may be surprised of what you might find, because I'm not saying the information's wrong at the vaccine. It's not complete. It's
Yeah.
incomplete.
Exactly. It's not, and it's
incomplete.
People aren't being given the correct
full
information,
host of
to
information,
make an
yeah.
informed consent.
Yeah. So yeah,
thank
we've got a
you.
job to do, haven't we?
Yeah, we've all got a job to do. We've all got responsibility. And like you say, it's gone past the stage of protecting yourself. The
Oh,
people
yeah.
have had it. It's about stepping forward and protecting the kids.
The children,
Yeah,
indeed.
100%.
So thank you so
Oh,
much
thank
for
you so
coming
much.
on.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's been amazing, and there's been lots of information out there, and I'm sure that we'll get lots of people reaching out to us, and hopefully not with
Hopefully.
so many awful stories, heartbreaking stories such as yours, Louise. And good on you for being brave and speaking out. And
thank
I know
you.
it takes a lot of courage.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank
Allowing
you.
me to speak.
You've done
again.
an amazing job. You
Oh,
really
thank
have.
you.
And you've delivered your message in such a lovely, respectful way. And I think that gains traction, and people will side with you then, because people are frightened.
Yeah.
So, and Leanne, for you, just say a little thank you to you for having
Yeah,
us,
thank
because
you.
I've watched your social media platform. You've got a position, you know, because obviously your husband's a career and what you do for yourself and your girls, and you are open to attack, and you don't ever let that put you down. You stand up, you know, you put your crown back on and just keep going, because I know those horrible messages, they sometimes do, you know, you do feel a pinch, but keep going, and the world's a better place for the light that you're spreading.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Breathe out the love.
Breathe in, inhale the love, outhale the negativity.
We all need to
Namaste.
meditate. We all need to meditate.
It's actually Yoga International Day today.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, International Yoga Day.
It's a few days today, isn't it?
Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're watching from YouTube, don't forget to hit that like, subscribe and notifications button. And if you're on Spotify, do the same. I hope to see you next week.